The gladiators of Rome weren't just fighters trapped in mortal combat. They were living legends, mythic figures who inspired both fear and admiration in equal measure. Under the scorching sun of the Colosseum, their battles weren't just for survival, but for eternal glory. Among them, a few names stand out, echoing through the ages as symbols of bravery, strength, and defiance. Spartacus, the slave who rebelled against the empire itself, and Commodus, the emperor who stepped into the arena to fight for pleasure. Their stories aren't just tales of victories and defeats, but of a profound impact on the Roman people's spirit and the popular culture that followed. In this video, we'll revisit these epic battles, exploring the legacy they left behind and how these figures shaped the collective imagination of Rome. Get ready for a journey into the blood-soaked arenas where every strike was a matter of life or death, and every victory was a step toward immortality. The first battle, the ritual of blood. Under the watchful eyes of thousands of spectators, the Colosseum would transform into a battlefield where death was the only certainty. The first fight of the day held special significance. It was the moment when the blood of the gladiators inaugurated the spectacle, a ritual meant to both appease the gods and excite the crowd. These initial combats were crucial, not just for their brutality, but for the symbolism of a human sacrifice in honor of Rome's power. In this arena, every strike and every dodge were more than mere movements. They were acts loaded with meaning. The audience, hungry for violence, wanted to see more than just a simple fight. They sought the grandeur of human skill facing the inevitability of death. Each gladiator who stepped into the arena knew that this first combat would define their reputation, marking them as either a hero or mere fodder for the beasts. And for the spectators, this bloody beginning was just the prelude to a spectacle that promised to challenge the very nature of life and death. The gladiators who took part in this first battle had the responsibility of setting the tone for the entire day. They were carefully chosen based on their courage and skill because the fate of the spectacle depended on how they performed at the outset. The crowd eagerly awaited the moment when bodies would clash and blood would flow across the sand, turning the Colosseum into a macabre temple where life was sacrificed in the name of entertainment. These opening combats weren't just fights. They were a ritual, a ceremony that sealed the fate of everyone involved. But beyond the blood spilled, there was something deeply symbolic about this first combat. It represented the duality of life and death, power and vulnerability. By stepping into the arena, the gladiators knew they were part of something greater than themselves. An eternal cycle of violence and sacrifice meant to entertain, inspire, and ultimately feed the legends that would echo through the centuries. This was the true ritual of blood in the Colosseum, where every drop spilled fed the myth of the gladiators. Epic battles, combats that shaped history. As the sun blazed over the Colosseum, the roar of the crowd grew in anticipation of the epic battles to come. These combats weren't just simple duels. They were clashes that would define eras and resonate through history. Each epic battle was meticulously planned to push the limits of strength, endurance, and courage. These were the moments where legends were forged and where gladiators became immortal in the eyes of the people. These battles were recounted with fervor by chroniclers and preserved in the collective memory of Rome. These epic duels often featured renowned gladiators whose names were known throughout the city. The fights were carefully choreographed, with settings that replicated historical or mythological battles, heightening the drama and intensity of the combat. The audience knew they were about to witness something extraordinary, and each strike exchanged in the arena reverberated like thunder in the imaginations of the spectators. The Colosseum's arena became a stage where the most intense dramas of life were played out with brutality and beauty. Some of these battles went down in history not only for the gladiators' skill, but also for the extraordinary circumstances in which they occurred. Fights where a single mistake could mean death, and where victory depended not just on physical strength but on cunning and the ability to read an opponent. These epic battles became legends, told and retold, immortalizing the gladiators who displayed courage beyond human limits. These epic battles not only defined the gladiators as heroes, but also shaped Roman popular culture. The stories of their deeds were sung by bards and etched into murals, ensuring their names would never be forgotten. They were the protagonists of a narrative that transcended time, influencing even the way Rome saw itself. In these battles, the arena ceased to be merely a place of death and became a stage where the impossible became reality and where gladiators, for brief moments, became gods. These battles left marks not only on the sands of the Colosseum, but also on the very soul of Rome. Through them, the gladiators became more than men. They became myths, symbols of human strength and resilience, capable of defying fate and leaving an indelible mark on history. Arena in fury, when gladiators faced beasts. On certain days, the Colosseum transformed into a true field of terror, where the fury of gladiators was put to the test against the savagery of wild beasts. Lions, tigers, bears, and even elephants were brought from distant lands to challenge the courage of men in the arena. These combats were more than just fights for survival. They were brutal spectacles that tested the limits of human and animal nature, reflecting Rome's power over all creatures on Earth. The battle against beasts was a test of courage and skill, but also a demonstration of dominance. Gladiators who faced these animals were not just warriors. They were symbols of civilization subduing the wild. The audience, watching a man face down a lion or tiger, experienced both fear and admiration, a mix of emotions that fueled the fascination with these deadly encounters. Every roar, every leap, every sword strike was a reminder of the delicate balance between man and beast. These fights, however, weren't just about brute strength. Survival depended on strategy, agility, and a sharp instinct for predicting the opponent's moves. One mistake, one misstep, and the gladiator could easily be torn apart. That's why those who emerged victorious from these battles were considered more than heroes. They were seen as near mythical beings who had faced and conquered the untamable. The fame of these gladiators spread quickly, and their stories of bravery against relentless beasts were told all over Rome. The impact of these fights on Roman culture was profound. It wasn't just about entertainment. It was a reaffirmation of Rome's power over the natural world. Gladiators who fought beasts symbolized the empire's ability to tame the wild, to impose order on chaos. Every victory was a victory for Rome, and every defeat, a reminder of the constant threat the outside world represented. Thus, these battles left a lasting legacy, etched into the collective memory as moments of peak tension and glory. At the end of these fights, the arena was no longer just a battleground. It was a scene of human triumph over nature, where courage and willpower overcame savagery and instinct. Each battle against the beasts was an unforgettable spectacle, where the line between life and death was drawn with blood and bravery. The final challenge, duels of life or death. When the Colosseum prepared for the final duels of the day, the air became thick with tension and anticipation. These duels were not mere fights, but the climax of a spectacle where two gladiators, both highly trained and equally determined, faced off in a battle where only one would emerge alive. The audience knew they were about to witness an epic showdown, where every strike, every move, was a matter of life or death. The final challenge demanded more than just physical strength from the gladiators. It was the ultimate test of skill, strategy, and psychological endurance. The duels were carefully orchestrated, often pitting gladiators with contrasting fighting styles against each other to maximize the unpredictability and drama of the combat. At this moment, the Colosseum became a cauldron of emotions, where the crowd was torn between the desire to see blood and the hope of witnessing a glorious victory. These final duels not only determined the fate of the gladiators involved, but also left a lasting mark on Roman popular culture. The stories of these combats were eagerly recounted by chroniclers, and the winners, when spared, became legendary figures, revered for their skill and bravery. The audience, watching these duels, experienced a catharsis, a release of repressed emotions through ritualized violence. Death, always looming, gave these duels a unique gravity. For the gladiators, every move was made with deadly precision, knowing that any hesitation could be fatal. For the spectators, the imminence of death brought an unparalleled intensity to the spectacle, where a man's life could be decided in a matter of seconds. On this blood-stained stage, the gladiators became more than men. They were avatars of fate, fighting in a game where death was the final arbiter. As the duel ended, the Colosseum would fall silent once more, but the impact of the battle lingered. The victor, exhausted and bloodied, was hailed as a hero, while the defeated was carried away as a grim reminder of the arena's merciless nature. These final duels encapsulated the essence of gladiatorial games, a desperate struggle for survival, where only the strongest, the cleverest, or the luckiest walked away alive. And with that, the legend of Rome and its gladiators grew even larger. Glory or ruin, battles that changed fates. In the arena, a gladiator's fate could change in a matter of seconds. Each battle carried the potential to elevate a man to immortal glory or drag him down to ultimate ruin. These decisive combats were crucial moments in the lives of gladiators, where victory could mean freedom and fame, while defeat almost always meant death. The Colosseum became, in this sense, a theater of destiny, where success and failure were separated by the thinnest of lines. Some of the most memorable battles were those where previously unknown gladiators managed to turn the tide in their favor, defeating powerful opponents and winning the crowd's favor. These turning points were celebrated with enthusiasm, transforming ordinary men into icons of the arena. However, for every victor, there was a defeated gladiator whose name faded into obscurity, his fate sealed by the arena's deadly silence. This duality of outcomes fueled the tension and drama of each combat, where everything was at stake. Those who managed to achieve glory after an epic victory were often rewarded with honors, and, in some cases, with their very freedom. But this glory came at a price: the constant threat of being challenged by new opponents, younger and more ambitious. The arena allowed no rest, and the gladiators who survived these decisive duels knew that the real battle was against time and against fortune itself, which could turn at any moment. On the other hand, ruin was an ever-present companion. Many gladiators, despite their skill and courage, met a tragic end in combats where fortune did not smile upon them. These moments of defeat were both lamented and expected by the audience, who saw death as an essential part of the spectacle. For the gladiators, facing ruin meant confronting not just the opponent, but destiny itself, in a cruel game where life was constantly in the balance. Thus, the battles that changed fates were not just about fighting skill, but about the ability to face and occasionally defy the uncertainty of the future. Each combat was a gamble, where glory and ruin lurked, ready to determine a gladiator's trajectory and his place in the history of Rome. Rebellions in the arena, the fight against oppression. While the Colosseum was a place of entertainment and a celebration of Roman power, it also became the stage for moments of rebellion and resistance. The gladiators, often slaves or prisoners of war, were aware of their position as pawns in a cruel and bloody game, and some of them rose up against this imposed fate, turning the arena into a battleground against oppression. These rebellions, though rare, marked history as symbols of the struggle for freedom and human dignity. One of the most dramatic forms of rebellion in the arena occurred when gladiators refused to fight. These acts of defiance were seen as a direct challenge to Roman authority and the very essence of the gladiatorial games. Instead of facing their opponents or wild beasts, the gladiators chose to defy the masters of the arena, sometimes even turning on the organizers or guards. Such moments were extremely dangerous and most often resulted in violent repression, but they also inspired a somber respect among the spectators, who saw in these acts an echo of their own rebellion against fate. These rebellions also served to expose the injustices of the system that fueled the games. The stories of gladiators who stood up against their masters spread quickly, inspiring others to question the morality of the combats and to reflect on the humanity of the fighters who had until then been seen only as instruments of entertainment. Although many of these gladiators met a tragic end, their actions planted the seeds of a deeper questioning about the nature of violence and power. Resistance in the arena was not limited to the refusal to fight. There were also episodes where gladiators managed to escape the Colosseum, organizing mass breakouts that defied Roman authority and sparked waves of unrest. These escaped gladiators became symbols of hope for the oppressed, and their stories were told and retold as examples of courage in the face of adversity. These escapes, though often brutally suppressed, showed that even within the walls of the Colosseum, the flame of freedom could not be completely extinguished. Thus, the rebellions in the arena revealed a darker and more complex dimension of the gladiatorial games. It wasn't just about fights for entertainment, but about a battlefield where the human spirit fought against oppression, trying to reclaim dignity and freedom in a world that denied them. These acts of resistance left an indelible mark on Roman history, reminding everyone that even in the most desperate conditions, the will to resist could never be extinguished. The last battle, the end of an era in Roman arenas. As time passed, the arenas of Rome, once vibrant with the sounds of war cries and the clash of swords, began to witness the end of an era. The last battle was not just the conclusion of a fight, but symbolized the decline of a tradition that had defined the Roman spirit for centuries. The reasons for the end of the gladiatorial games were many: political changes, cultural transformations, and the growing power of Christianity, which condemned the brutality of these bloody spectacles. The last officially recorded combat in Roman history marked a turning point. The crowds, which once filled the stands of the Colosseum, began to lose interest. The fights, which had been the primary entertainment for the Roman people, were gradually replaced by less violent forms of amusement. The arena, once the stage for grand combats, became a symbol of a past that many wished to forget. However, for those who remembered, every stone of the Colosseum seemed to whisper stories of courage and sacrifice. The decision to end the gladiatorial games reflected the changes in Roman society. Christianity, which was growing in influence, condemned the practice as barbaric and contrary to the teachings of compassion and mercy. As this new faith spread, gladiator arenas began to be seen as relics of a pagan era that no longer fit the emerging new world. Thus, the gladiators, once celebrated as heroes, came to be remembered as victims of a cruel and relentless system. However, the legacy of the gladiators did not disappear with the end of the fights. The stories of these epic battles, legendary duels, and moments of rebellion and resistance continued to be told for generations. The Colosseum, even in ruins, remained a powerful symbol of both the glory and horror of Rome's past. The gladiators, whose names and deeds echoed through the centuries, became mythological figures representing strength, courage, and the primal fight for survival. The last battle may have marked the end of an era, but the legends of the gladiators lived on. They transformed into narratives that inspired not just the Roman people, but cultures around the world. The arena of the Colosseum, even in silence, continued to resonate with the echoes of past battles, reminding everyone that, somewhere in time, ordinary men became immortal by wielding a sword and facing their fate with bravery. With the end of the games, Rome lost more than just a spectacle. It lost a part of its identity. However, the stories of the gladiators and their final battles remain alive, perpetuated in the collective memory as a testament to the complex and violent history of an empire that, for a time, ruled the known world.